Well, welcome back. Here we are now with the second half of Module 9, Human Resource Management. We're going to talk now about developing the team now that we've acquired them and managing that team. So let's see what we're going to do here. Here is the knowledge area overview, and we're going to look at 9.3 right now and then later 9.4. Develop project team. What does that mean? We need to improve their competencies so they can provide better service and value to our project. Improve team member interaction. You know, the more the team can work together to share their ideas, their issues with you and with each other, the better off you'll be. And just to generally improve the team overall environment with certain things like recognitions and rewards would be a great thing to have here, and we'll talk about that. Here's our data flow diagram. Again, always in the middle in the gray is the current subject matter, and this 9.3, develop a team. Input, three things. The Human Resource Management Plan and how we're going to do this development. It gives us guidelines on what we're going to do. Well, let's look at this first. The project staff assignments that we did and acquire the team come in right here from 9.2 that we just did. Now notice here, I mentioned this earlier, here it is here. There are two different kinds of resource calendars. One is the resource calendar for our own project staff that we bring in to develop, and there are resource calendars coming out of conduct procurements. Now right off the bat, if there were no agreements in the project charter that we needed to consider, which is generally the case, we don't have agreements in the project charter, but sometimes there are if they're pre-existing procurements that we need to use for our project. But certainly later on, if we buy anything, we make commitments, purchase orders, contracts, memos of understanding, whatever it is, if we commit to third parties to provide us services for our project, there are people doing that, right? And we need to know what their resource calendars are so that we can coordinate it with ours so that we don't get a break in their service when we need something in our schedule. So we need to consider their resource calendars too from procurements. May seem like kind of a foreign concept, but it's certainly valid. So we're going to look at that in more detail when we talk about procurement management, chapter 12. So our inputs are our management plan, HR management plan. That's guidance, how-tos on how our resources, how we're going to define them, staff them, manage them, control them, and release them. At this point, we don't put people's names there right now. We don't know who they are, but in general, head count, how we're going to handle these issues, these actions. Training strategies, how we're going to train people based on their role and their responsibilities. Some people may need specialized training or bolster the training they have. And then rewards, of course, and recognitions, how we're going to do that. You need to have that firm and identified in your management plan so that you can do those things with confidence. You're not just like showing favoritism. Oh, here's a reward, give them a bone. No, they need to know that a bone's coming at some point if they do a good job. So you need to document that beforehand. In other words, you can't be arbitrary with it. And of course, disciplinary actions, we didn't talk about that specifically, but you need to define how you're going to discipline your staff if you have issues with complying with the rules and regulations and what they're doing on your team. So now we have our staff assignments that we did in 9.2. That's, the team development starts now, right here with that list. So it shows who's on the team, and again, you got your team directory and your project org chart that you've got to keep up to date all the time, because it'll change over time, most likely. And of course, resource calendars from our acquired team and from procurements. So those are your inputs. Now, given that, with all that people information, now what are we going to do with that in order to develop our team? A lot of stuff here. Interpersonal skills come to bear again. So go look at X3. So you need, as you develop your staff, you're going to have to interface with them very closely, especially when it comes to things like discipline, or even rewards, or just managing them day to day, how you develop them, train them. You have to have skills in doing that with your people. So there you are, skills, behavioral competencies, proficiencies, you need that, proficiencies in communicating, your emotional intelligence, you can't let somebody get to it, you can't show it, you can't break down in front of them, they'll lose their trust, their respect, their confidence in your abilities to be a leader. So you got to be careful how you interface with your staff. You want to go to your boss and cry on his shoulder, that's one thing, but don't let your team see that. So be careful with emotional intelligence. Don't rant at them and don't go crazy. Manage them well. Conflict resolution, of course, emotional intelligence is really big involved with that. In your negotiating skills, your ability to influence, to build your team up, and just basically facilitate your team as a group. So you need to have skills in doing that as you develop your team. Training, a big one. You want to enhance team members' competencies, and sometimes this is the only opportunity that a team member has or an employee has to receive training. He may ask his boss, oh, please, I want more training in, Oracle 5, or, help me, do this. I need training. Well, we don't have the money, don't have the budget. Well, now he's assigned to a team, and he can get training because as project manager, he's been complaining about this for a year, and now in your budget, you've earmarked money for training, and now he can get the training he needs, which will do two things. It'll help you certainly in your project, and when he's released from your project, he now has an increased skill level, which is a great, asset to your company. So a couple of good reasons why you need to train your people under your project budget. And again, training could be formal, send them off to a class, bring a tutor in to tutor your class, or it could be informal. You could just, one-on-one, help this fellow. You could mentor this person, or whatever it is. It could be formal, informal. Scheduled training, would be in your HR plan. If you have scheduled training that everybody, participates in from time to time, that would be formal training. And you could have unscheduled training due to, and this would be perhaps maybe you're informal. You're just watching your staff perform. You say, wow, he's not really being very confident in what he's doing. He's making mistakes. He's always looking in the book for, reasons. He's searching the web. I mean, those are good things, self-education, but maybe he needs more than that. So you can, just by observations and appraising what they're doing, you can help these people increase their skills and competence by providing them real good training. And of course, training costs have to be in your budget. You need to know that at the beginning. And in your project charter, you could even, where you aggregate a high-level swag at the budget before you really know what it is exactly. You could say, we're also going to have 10,000 or 20,000 for training that we'll define in detail later. So make sure you never miss training costs in your budget. And for that matter, when it comes to our schedule, when we finally get to scheduling it, and in the budget also, you need to have time and money allocated for you, for your team. Project management of the project is its own cost center, basically. So, don't overlook that, and don't overlook that in your WBS when we get to the work breakdown schedule, because it's a viable component. Just because it's you and the project team is no different than anybody else doing work on the project. So we'll see that when we get to the schedule management. You want a team build. Of course, your interpersonal skills enters in a great deal in team building, as we saw. Training certainly builds your team, but more specifically, what's the primary objective? You want people to work together effectively, and it's continuous, never ends. Keep them working together. You see a problem, you want to make a correction, course change, help people, train them, negotiate with them, mentor them, may have to discipline them, and disciplining one person may increase, the cohesion of the team overall, because they say, boy, this guy was really a problem, and now, he's being dealt with. Either he'll be released and somebody else will come on if that's your decision, or he'll be a better person once you discipline him and show him the right way, and then the morale is better. So team building, never-ending process. Now there's this concept called the Tuckman ladder. You may have seen these kinds of things before. You might say, oh yeah, it's just fluff, they put names of things, but these are real things. That they really have conceptual meat behind them. And it's a team development model, and there's 5 steps to it. You form, storm, norm, perform, and adjourn. Basically what this is, forming. When your team first gets together, they form the team. They're all independent. They're not working together yet, but they're on the team. So that's called forming. And initially they're just doing their own thing in their own little silos. They don't really know well how to interact with the team. Then they start to get the idea. You mentor them, you help them. And now they start storming, meaning, okay, wow, let's go, collaborate. They're all open to ideas. They're getting together. They're doing a better job. Now, the cohesion is coming together. And then you have norming. Now they're settling down. They're doing the job. Trust. They trust each other. They trust you. They're doing the job. All while they're collaborating and are open to ideas, okay? And they still have some form of independence because they're doing their own job, but they know that they rely on everybody else and everybody else relies on them, so that's norming. Finally, you get to the real efficient project model where they're all doing their job. They understand the schedule. They know their work. They know how to feed back things and the whole bit. That's called performing. Now they're interdependent. They're relying on everybody else to help them, and issue management is more effective because they know everybody. They have a trust in what they're doing, that they're not going to be embarrassed theoretically, because they make a mistake. They'll be open about it, get it resolved quick, and move on. And then finally, at the end, you release people, adjourning. So these are the 5 steps, and most likely you're going to get a question on the PMP exam about what is a Tuckman ladder, or they'll list some of the steps and say which one doesn't belong or which one is missing. So you need to know forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. Okay, Tuckman ladder, team building framework. So that's tools and techniques of team building. We're going to get into ground rules here shortly because this is a long list. Take a short break here and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, well, let's continue our look into the tools and techniques of developing our team. We've looked at the interpersonal skills you need, the training that you need to provide your staff. It can be very beneficial. Team building, of course, is essential. And now you need ground rules. People need to know how to behave on your project, what do you expect of them, and what they expect of you. So those are ground rules. You have to have clear expectations. Your staff does, and so do you, regarding acceptable team behavior. Codes of conduct. If it's appropriate and you're in a particular environment, they may have to wear certain kinds of clothes. A suit and tie maybe if you're in that kind of environment. Or you can wear shorts and a T-shirt. who knows if you're in some foreign country where you're on the beach doing a project. But the point is, they need to know what's acceptable and where the limits and where they step over the line in dress code and in their behavior and whatever, their language, whatever it is, which would be communications, and how are they going to communicate. And this could even get into your communication management plan of what are they not allowed to do. For example, maybe they can't use their cell phones to communicate to people, chat. It's really nice, fast, but you have no record of that. You need to keep records of your communications because you don't want your staff, even though it's the best intent and the end result may be okay, you don't want them making commitments on a cell phone to somebody where you have no record of that. So you need to set rules on, what is acceptable communication. Of course, clear expectations of them working together as a team, which is reinforced and modified and bolstered by your team building and training and your interpersonal skills. So all this stuff, works together. They're not independent little bullets here of how you would operate. They all work together. They're all cohesive. It all melds together. You got to coordinate all this stuff yourself. And meeting etiquette, certainly. We're gonna, when we get to communication management, we're going to see, how you can go from, 2 channels of communication to hundreds of channels of communication, which are with a relatively small set of people in the room. So you need to have meeting etiquette, who can talk, why they can talk, raise your hand if you want, but you need to set some rules so that you don't have chaos in meetings. So you need to set that. And it says here, all team members are watchdogs. In fact, that's from the PMBOK almost directly, meaning everybody needs to watch out for everybody else and try to be self-corrective. Oh, come on, don't do that. For number one, the PM over there is going to get on our case, and I don't want to be involved with it. But just don't do this. Not appropriate. It's against our code of conduct. Be cool. So everybody has to help everybody else live in this project environment according to the ground rules. And of course, if the team members are not successful in, modifying somebody's behavior, then they have to go to you, and then your interpersonal skills kick in where you need to get in there and help resolve the situation. Co-location when you're developing your team, because of all these things, certainly has an impact. They call it a tight matrix when you're all together in the same area, not the same room necessarily, but it could be in the same building, in the same floor, where you're all working together, a tight matrix all together. The war room, I'm sure you've heard of that. We're not talking the Pentagon. We're talking about a project team meeting room that's dedicated to the team, where they can keep on the walls, charts and schedules and rules and all sorts of things, the war room. Virtual team, if you have that option, there's skilled resources because you're using virtual stuff. You can get people where you couldn't get otherwise. Again, less travel costs, proximity to external entities maybe. But of course, the flip side, it may cost more in communications and the language and issues of isolation and things like that could impact it too. But co-location is better. It's the best option if possible. And then here's recognitions and rewards in developing your team. A big incentive, a big motivator for your team if you do it right. You want to reward desirable behavior, and again, you don't want to be arbitrary. You want to reward it based on preset conditions in your human resource management plan. You may have many things you can do. I'm going to pick number 3 because this guy did so-and-so, or this lady was effective in doing something, so she gets this kind of reward, cash reward, certificate, free dinner, whatever it is that you set. They know that it's available, whatever that might be, because they can read the plan. And they may actually strive for some of those things. It makes them a better team. You can base it on performance appraisals also. If everybody gets a 3.2 aggregate score on their performance appraisal, they get a free $50 gift certificate to someplace. Whatever it is, but you got to have it documented. And it's got to satisfy a need, meaning you don't want to give somebody a crazy T-shirt if they don't want a crazy T-shirt. But they have a need. They want to be recognized, and whatever the reward is, they need to be glad that they've received it. It needs to do something for them. And of course, motivate staff is the main reason you do these things. Now here, personnel assessment tools. This is where you, as project manager, act basically on behalf of HR when you appraise your people's performance, your staff's performance. You look at team strengths, their weaknesses. Okay, you can do surveys to find out things that you may need to find out about people, what they're doing, what they think. You can interview them. You can give them competency tests to determine what maybe they need more training, or maybe they don't belong here at all. We made a mistake. We just didn't look at them in deep enough detail at the beginning. We'll swap them out. And if you swap out staff, what do you need? You need a change control. As odd as that may seem to some of you, change control. Here goes Sue. Here comes Bob. You have a record of it. Focus groups. Get a group together and say, we've had this issue, for example. What do you think about it? You get everybody's opinion, and then you can, distill that down into some action that you need to take with an employee, whether it's good or bad. So these are tools you have to develop your team. And we're talking pure people stuff here. So all this stuff is good. Good to have, good to know, but as long as it's documented so you know what you're doing. Okay, now the outputs of this are, when you're developing your team, no matter how you reward them and do all this stuff, the final bottom line is how did they do their job based on the development capabilities and opportunities that you gave them. How did they do their job? That's your team performance assessment. Successful team performance means there's technical success with these people meeting their project objectives because they have assignments, and the quality of the work that they did, and quality based on some measurement. You know, you're going to measure them against some baseline. Okay, and how did they do? On time. Did they do it on time? Did they do it within cost? You know, did they meet all of these project requirements in the work they did, so you can assess them and give them grades, basically. Task and result oriented. So they did a task, they do it within time, on budget, and what was the result? Was it a quality result or not? That kind of thing. And then you do effectiveness evaluation. Did their skills improve because of training or just because they've done the work and now their skill has improved in what they've done? You need to rate that, put it in their assessment. Are they more competent now? You can have great skills, but you're not competent. You just don't know how to apply them properly. So you need to assess their competency also. Does the team itself and people, did they reduce turnover because they're happy? You know, they're good. They like this project. They're working well. They don't want to leave the project. You may have people lined up, saying, man, that's the project I want to be on, which is an advantage to you, because if there are somebody that you do need to swap out, you've got a waiting list of people that want to get on your project. So, you know, if it's okay with their resource calendar, you may want to swap people out through change control. And just in general, the team cohesiveness increases because you are assessing them and you are helping them improve their skills, kind of selfishly, because it would improve your success on the project as a project manager, but inversely, it would help them in their own professional career life on your project and later. So team assessment is the output from developed project team. Now, because people are environmental factors, you need then to update some of their human resource items out there in the environment cloud, which are employee records and skills assessments, because they have to do with human resource stuff. So you update their records with your skills assessments, and that kind of completes the loop. So that's how we develop the project team the PMBOK way, which probably in this instance is not very unlike anywhere else you would do this kind of thing. But here, what the big deal with PMBOK in general, of course, is they give you the preferred inputs, the key inputs that you need to consider, the tools and techniques that would best help you accomplish the outputs that are in these processes. So in a minute, we're going to come back and wrap up human resource management when we talk about now managing the team. So we'll see you in a bit. Okay, well, now we're going to wrap up project human resource management knowledge area with its last process, which is manage the project team. So far, we've developed our plan on how we're going to do these things. We've acquired our team. We've developed our team, or at least have plans in place on how we're going to develop our team with rewards, recognitions, and assessments and things like that. Now, the results of those assessments and all that good stuff and developed team, we're going to deal with under managing the team. So basically, we're going to track team performance based on our assessment, provide feedback to them to improve the staff, resolve issues with the staff, and manage team changes to our team roster, team staffing assignment. So that's what we're going to do here. So here's our input, tool, technique, output, our ETO diagram. I just want to point out that the primary output of this process are change requests. And why, again, would we have change requests for HR? We may have changes of staff due to a number of reasons, and one could be disruptions, staff replacements for some reason, either because they're not competent, we replace them, or they leave the company, you got to replace them, or they went on a family leave, now you got to replace them, or at least temporarily anyway. They're reassigned because they had a very hard pre-assignment to a project, to a prior project or another project, and for whatever reason now we need to release them, either planned or unplanned, but whatever they're leaving, so we need to deal with that. And outsourcing is another issue where we may need a change control to bring people in or release them back. So that's a major output is change requests. Project documents are updated as an output of manage the team, and why is that? Issues logs, we need to, from the client, may have complaints about, perhaps staffing, your staff, so we need to deal with those. Roles and responsibilities, their descriptions may change, morph to better fit your organization or your project, and your staff assignments, of course, just may change in general, so rotate people for some reason, then you need to deal with that. So your documents would change because of that. So here's the data flow diagram for process 9.4, right there in the middle. Your major inputs are your staff assignments, who to manage. Your resource plan comes in, that's how to manage. And then your team assessment reports come in. That's basically what are you going to manage to, because that's your assessment. You need to know where you really help reward people more, give more confidence, or give them some kind of extra actions. You need to know what to do. Work performance reports here out of monitor and control. Remember, monitor and control 4.4 is where you build the work. So it comes in as work performance reports. And remember, work performance reports are only outputs from 4.4, nowhere else. So those are nice reports that give you, more overview of how things are working on the project, which you could use to deal with your staff and manage them better. Here's the stakeholder issue log. It comes in too. That may affect people if there's complaints or accolades to certain team members with an issue log. An issue could be, you're not treating this guy enough. He's the best guy I've ever had. He's a great guy. You need to reward him. Make sure you do. Well, that's an issue. You got to resolve it, and you deal with it here and manage. Outputs, primary output again is your change request that goes into where one place only, 4.5, perform integrated change control. And then your usual project management plan updates, project document updates, whatever is appropriate in the context of managing your team. So here's a little more detail on the inputs, the HR plan. Of course, what's in there are your roles and responsibilities. People's names are not assigned in the HR plan, but the role and responsibility that would be assigned to are in there. Of course, your org project organization, your org chart, and your staffing management plan on how you need resources over time would be in there. And you won't really know that fully until you get down to your resource estimating in your time management plan. Your project staff assignments are there because now we know who the people are because we've staffed them in Acquire. Here's your performance reports. Again, your current status versus forecast. Are you on track with the way your people are performing, for example? Plan for the future. You see work performance reports, you see where maybe I need more recognition, more awards for these people because they're really doing a good job. And HR requirements may have some issue in there as far as who you need to release and things like that. So it could be anything, but work performance reports are good to have for managing your team. And here are the actual assessments that you did on your team, and you will do these continuously or periodically over time with your staff. These are used to resolve issues. Now, these are your own issues with the staff. They're not the capital I issues of your stakeholders in this case, but your own internal issues. You need to resolve if they come out in your performance assessments in that manner. You may have to modify the way you communicate with certain people because they're just not getting it, so maybe you need to be more one-on-one with somebody until their skill level is increased, where you can just leave them alone again. Of course, conflict could be revealed from assessments. You're always having trouble with this group or this person, or maybe they have to interact with a stakeholder, which happens, and that could be okay, but maybe there's an issue, a little rub with the stakeholder, which would be a capital I issue, and now you have to deal with it as a little I issue in your team. And just generally, you may find a reason to improve team interactions because of your performance assessments. So that's an input into managing your team. Here's the issue log, and it's always, once you get an issue from your stakeholder, who's responsible for resolving the issue by when. I mean, actually, we should have said that way up, and maybe I did, way up in stakeholder management. But whenever there's an issue, somebody has to be responsible to resolve it, and you have to have a target date to get it done by so it doesn't lag on forever. Your organizational assets that you could have available to you from your organization, or you may want to make something up. Either way, certificates of appreciation to your staff members would be nice. You may have a project newsletter if it's appropriate for that kind of thing. Website, maybe you have a website, a portal, internal, maybe external, though I wouldn't think so, but if you're like a government organization, you may want to advertise your new project in a public website. Okay, bonus structures, based on their performance, employees should expect, well, if I do this, I get this kind of bonus, whatever, you want to publish those. And they may even be predetermined by your company. It says, on any project, if you do these kind of things, you meet these qualifications, you will get this kind of bonus. Okay, so if you have those, you certainly want to use them, but make sure you have those in your budget if you're going to use them. And you may want to give nice corporate apparel out, nice shirts, jackets, hats, mugs, whatever it is you think would increase your morale and the project look nice. But those are all methods of helping manage your team and keeping them on board and motivated and interested. Now that we have all those inputs, what do we do with them? How do we produce the outputs that we need? Well, again, observation and conversation. Now you're managing the team. You're walking the talk, right? You're staying in touch with the people. You look at you watch their attitudes. Are they happy? Are they getting more upset? Are they withdrawn? Are they overbearing on other people? Whatever it is, observe, talk to them, see what they're thinking, how they're doing. Monitor their progress. Obviously, I mean, this is your main job. Your main job is to keep things under control. Try and avoid change so that you can manage to your baselines. But to do that, you want to watch what your people are doing when they're building your deliverables, whatever they may be. And again, there may be hundreds and hundreds of work items that people have to perform throughout the project, down to that work item level that we'll see in the work breakdown structure. You may want to just watch and observe, how are they doing this? What methods are they using? Is it good professional coding, for example? Are you documenting your code if you're doing a coding project? You're documenting that. Watch how they're doing and make sure that in the end you have real quality stuff so it doesn't get rejected. Cost of quality, you want to keep that down. Monitor their accomplishments, and when they're done with work items, which is what they're there for, to do these work items to produce the aggregate deliverable. When they're done with things, make sure they're done with them, and at that time, go and congratulate them or give them thanks or say that was a good job, or maybe we need to next time, watch out for this when you do this, or maybe you need to go back and fix something. You can do that right then and there real quickly if you're at that level before it gets into incorporated further into your deliverable, and therefore the cost goes up, the time goes up, and correct it. So you want to be on top of that, and you do that by observing, conversation, walking around, walk the talk. And again, monitor interpersonal issues. See who's bickering with each other, who's complimenting each other. What's going on, what alliances, what's going on. Just be aware of your staff. You got to be aware of your staff. And there it is. Walk the talk. Project performance appraisals that you did. Now that you've done them as an output, now you use them as a tool to manage your team. It'll help you clarify roles and their responsibilities if things are out of whack. You provide constructive feedback now because of those things. You can discover problems that are going on in there. You can identify reasons and needs for particular training plans. What this needs a little extra training here, things like that. And you can actually set goals with people now and say, okay, here's your assessment. You need to improve on this. By this date, we want you to be able to do so and so, or have had this training, or whatever it is. But set goals so that they can work toward it and have a result on a certain date, rather than just let it lag out and you never know when it's really accomplished. Performance appraisals, conflict management, of course, and you're managing your team. Conflict is inevitable. I don't think any of you out there watching this would disagree that conflict is inevitable when you're talking with more than one person. As long as there's two people or more, you're going to have some conflict somewhere. So you got to deal with it. Now, this is important that we understand this. This is, of course, all this stuff, unless I say it otherwise, is all out of the PMBOK. And this is prime PMP exam question fodder right here. So know this stuff. You can compromise and you can reconcile. You can smooth, you can accommodate. Or you can collaborate and problem solve, okay? Or you can just withdraw and avoid it. Another, which is an option, is viable. In some cases, that's an appropriate thing to do. Or you could force it and direct it. Let's look at these in a little more detail. To compromise and reconcile. Okay, that means you need to provide a degree of satisfaction to all parties. Compromise. Everybody is happy a little bit, So at least they're all on the same level. They say, okay, we're all kind of happy. We didn't get everything we want, but everybody got something. So you go on with life. You can smooth and accommodate. You want to smooth and accommodate, meaning emphasize the areas that you all agree on. Okay, we all agree on this part of it, right? Yeah, okay, we're that far. Well, maybe you need to concede to him, and because we all agree basically, so we got to give up something. So conceding to one's position versus others, smooth, accommodate. Maybe you'll come out of that issue on that basis. That's an option you have. You need to try it if it's appropriate. You can collaborate and problem solve. A little different. Here you get, multiple viewpoints on the issue at hand. You dialogue, you talk all about it, and finally you get some kind of consensus. So, we all think that we ought to resolve it in this manner, right? You may not all be happy, but for the benefit of the project as a whole, you all can deal with it, right? Do we all agree? Okay, you're done, move on. Document it. Got to document these things. You can withdraw and avoid the problem, the issue, the conflict. Why would you do that? Well, maybe you want to postpone it until you are better prepared to deal with it. You may want to get more information. Consult an expert. How would you handle this? You do that, and finally when you're ready, you come back and you face the issue. Or if you really want to avoid it, you can wait until somebody else resolves it. Now, that doesn't put you in the best light depending on the situation, but it is a valid option to handle conflict by just withdrawing for a while, get more information, or just waiting and hoping somebody else figures it out before you do and resolves it and it goes away. But of course, to do that, you got to be sensitive to your project, your baselines, your schedules, the attitudes, who knows what. But that's one of the things that you could do. And the last one is just say, no, I don't care what you say. You're going to do it this way, period. Pushing your viewpoint at the expense of others. You're going to alienate people if you do this, but maybe you just got to do it. It's a win-lose. It's a win for you, lose for them. It may be a lose for you in the end because you're going to alienate people. Their productivity, their motivation will go down. But maybe you got some emergency. Say, I don't care, we got to do it this way, make it happen, an option. So these are the 5 options that you have to resolve conflict when you manage your team. So you need to know these so that if you're quizzed on them, you can answer appropriately. And of course, obviously, interpersonal skills are a tool you need to deal with all these matters. Your leadership, the way you influence, how you make those decisions, in particular, maybe the conflict resolution decisions, which ones you're going to use, which ones you're going to try. You need to do all this, plus everything else in the interpersonal skills appendix may come to bear as you do your team management. So now that we have tools and techniques, we have some outputs. Change requests are the main output. Staffing changes again, even though it's maybe foreign to you in your work. Remember, you got to do it the PMBOK way when you answer questions on the exam. So the PMBOK way is if you move, outsource, or replace people, you need a change request to document it. And you may have the occurrence where the change control board says, no, we're not going to let you release that person, or we're not going to bring this person on board, or whatever. So, it's always a good thing to have change requests because you do have a definitive log, you have a definitive reason why you're doing these personnel changes. Preventative changes, too, may come out of this managed process, like cross-training actions. Give them cross-training, a change request to send this guy to training would be good to document because that will help your project. Or to clarify roles, you may have a change to prevent a problem in the future. Okay, we're going to prevent the problem because now you understand your role because here's a change that changes your job description a little bit to make it more clear. So changes are good. Change requests, remember, underline, change. Something is changing. Even if it's your staff, change request. And your job is to manage change. And if you manage change properly, you will meet your baselines. That's just how the formula would work. PM plan updates, your management plan, project documents, issue logs, role descriptions, project staff assignments may change, so you get those prepared and documented because they go in your repository later. Environmental factors, your performance appraisals for your people, because we're talking people, so we're talking environmental factors, so they may update, or they will update when you do your appraisals. And your skill updates, your personnel will become more skillful, which is a good environmental factor. Skill updates, they learned skills, that's why it's an environmental factor. And finally, your OPA updates, historical information, lessons learned, obviously. Templates, you may adjust templates that better fit your project, or just, because we're talking updates here, to existing templates, and then standard processes may be tweaked for your project or for the organization as a whole if you found a better way to do something and your organization buys it. So that's the output. So that's it for human resource management. Next topic, and the most logical thing we can do, will be talk about now we have the team in place, how are we going to communicate with the team and with the stakeholders. So that's in module 10 coming up.